Okay. Hello, everybody.
Yay.
Thank you for joining on a beautiful Friday in LA. So to all of you out there, I'll just kick things off. I'm Dominique Clayton. I am an LA native, and also I'm an arts writer, an art dealer, and an arts manager. And I truly believe that art is my ultimate passion. It's a labor of love, and I'm so excited about this conversation, so excited about what the clinic is doing, and I really just want to dig right away. But I will just say I am the founder of Dominique Gallery, which is a storefront and virtual gallery in the West Adams Arts District. I'm actually just down the street from another gallery, Black-owned gallery, Band of Vices. I have had the pleasure of working with all of the artists on this panel, showing their work in the actual space and also virtually through various exhibitions and art fairs and art auctions, which is how we're all gathered here today. In addition to that, I work at the Broad Museum, and I have the pleasure of living and working amongst amazing contemporary art, and the museum will be opening soon, so stay tuned. Also, as an arts writer, I have contributed to several arts publications, including Cultured Magazine, La La Magazine, Sugarcane Magazine, and a few others. I think that it's very important to continue to not only show the work of minority artists, but also to archive all of their exhibitions, their profiles, and their work through print publications. So that's another very strong passion of mine. Also, I am a mommy of 3 daughters, and so community, family, and health is very important to me, especially Black maternal health. So the next exhibition that I'll be putting together is actually to honor artists who are parents and to amplify that very unique struggle. So let's get right into the discussion. I'll give you guys a little background. The Venice Family Clinic created these talks, including this one today, as an opportunity for their community of supporters, from collectors to artists to simply the art curious, to share and learn about the incredible artwork featured in the silent auction, which went live just a couple days ago. The arts community supports Venice Art Walk in turn supports the clinic's services, which include primary and specialty care, mental health services, substance abuse treatment, child development services, domestic violence counseling, and also street medicine for people experiencing homelessness, health insurance enrollment, just to name a few. And the clinic has also been on the front line of the COVID-19 crisis, providing testing and vaccinations. And I really support the clinic, not only because of the services it provides, but also how it utilizes the power of art and community to further their efforts. Over 40 years ago, Venice Family Clinic Art Walk and Auction was founded by activist artists and volunteers who wanted to ensure that no one in their neighborhood would go without health care, no matter their income, insurance, or immigration status. This legacy continues today and brings me to the focus of this afternoon's discussion. Today's event features first-time Venice Art Walk participating artists, Hasef, Alicia Pillar and Trotter. And together we're going to discuss the evolution of art and activism. And we'll also share the power of allyship community organizations, local artists, and patrons can create as they strive to address social and racial justice. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about each artist. I'll start with Hasef. He is an LA native. He's based not too far from me, in the Leimert Park Crenshaw district. Hasef is an amazing mixed media artist. He does everything from assemblage to drawing, collage, conceptual work, you name it. And all of his work, as I see it, really conveys strong messaging about his identity and the identities of others in his community. And I just love that about his work. And there's a beautiful print of his in the show. And I was also happy to support his practice and I showed him in a solo exhibition in 2018 at my gallery here on Adams Boulevard, and it was just a beautiful turnout of friends and family and people from the arts community. And since then, he's done amazing work. He's shown at other galleries, he's done artist residencies, he's traveled, he's been featured in a number of programs, and I'm just so proud of the work that he's done and that he's doing, that he's going to continue to do. And I can't wait for the rest of the world to kind of see his vision, because he's truly an incredible, I wouldn't even say emerging. I would say he's right at peak right now, and I can't wait to see what's next. And Trotter is another, well, he's LA based, but he's actually from Detroit. And we had the pleasure of meeting last year when I included him in a virtual exhibition called Spotlight, which featured the works of 6 different artists of color. And his photography is just so remarkable. And this series that he did, In Plain Sight, is just a testament to kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit later. How we can reimagine what the Black experience could be and what the perceptions have been in the past, and what they should be, what they could be in the future. And so by placing Black bodies into these different spaces and adorning them with these angel wings, we kind of see one another in a different light. And I'll let him speak a little bit about that as we get into it. But in addition to this kind of work, he also does a lot of editorial photography. He's been featured in several magazines. His photography is bar none, you know, and I think that as artists evolve, it's important to also talk about doing work for exhibition, doing work that's editorial, and how to keep that balance, and also how to leverage some of this work to support other causes, because photography, unlike some of the other art mediums, can easily be shared and amplified in a way to kind of convey different messages and work with other partnerships. So I think that as we get into this discussion, there's something really critical to talk about how we're using photography to not only archive things in real time, but also to create another narrative. And then, last but not least, is the lovely Alicia Pillar. Alicia is an LA-based artist. She's originally from Chicago. Her work, to me, is just, it stops you in your track. There's so much going on. There's so many things to look at and to feel. But I will say, Alicia's work envisions historical traumas, both political and environmental, through the lens of a microscope. Her sculptures and installations conceive of past atrocities, suffering, and accomplishments as biological forms broken down to a cellular level. And what I love about her work is every time I look at one of her pieces, there's something very small detail that I notice new each time. And so the intricacies of her work and the stories, the layers of stories that are in there are exceptional. So I hope that you guys can take a closer look at the work that's in this auction and also some of the other work that she has done. She has a couple of pieces up right now in LA. And yeah, so I will, like I said, have each artist talk a little bit more about the work that's in the auction. But I would like to get into, sorry, 1 second, I'm having a little delay here. I'd like to get into this topic of art and activism. It's not a new concept. It is art and imagery and words and texts and all of these things have been utilized for years and years to make a statement, to stand for something, to share ideas and feelings. If you look back at artists like Keith Haring, Shepard Fairey, Ai Weiwei, Nan Golden, Kara Walker, all of these artists have always made really poignant work that addresses issues from race to sexism, to health crises. Like before COVID, you know, there's a lot of artists that did work that spoke to the AIDS crisis, and also political campaigns. So art as activism has always been there. It's embedded in a lot of the things. And if you look back at some of the presidential campaigns and other past incidents of racial injustice, art has always been centered in that. And I can think of different times in my life growing up where there were significant historic moments happening. And even though I don't remember the details of what was going on, you know, as a kid, you don't have the full perception. I remember the commercials and the videos and the posters and the billboards and the work that I would see. And it stays with you. And so art is extremely powerful in that way because it leaves a lasting impression. And also artists sometimes through their work say all the things that a lot of us are thinking but can't articulate. Or that gets lost in translation through a written article or a book or a statement. Sometimes the art and the image is really just the embodiment of that feeling, and that can stand the test of time. So if you look at work, you know, like Guerrilla Girls or any kind of statement pieces from years ago, a lot of that messaging and a lot of those feelings are so relevant today. And I think that's what's unique about what's happening with Black art right now is that everybody is looking to what Black artists have to say and what they're feeling, and not even just artists, but the Black community, because the last year was an onslaught of trauma and pain and really calling to action. And the images that sort of accompanied those feelings are going to stay around forever. And we're always going to reflect on this past year, this moment. But I really want to kind of tap into a deeper layer here, because the fact that we're all here today for this art auction, this talk, it really demonstrates a specific shift. And I want to kind of dig deeper into what that really means and how all of the artists here and the rest of the artists that are in the auction, that are in LA, just globally, how they can tap into what's going on and how their work can evolve with sort of future changes and processes. So I'll just give a little backstory about what happened with my gallery and my arts practice last year, and then I'm gonna pass it over to you guys. But as I see it, companies, institutions, organizations, you know, last year it kind of came up that they have some explaining to do. There's changes that need to be made, a call for transparency, a call for changes in leadership, because the systems that were in place, we discovered were not working. They were not serving people in the best way possible. And, you know, you can say that that's because of racism, structural, institutional racism. You can say that's just because of media, of capitalism. All the reasons combined showed us that things were not working the way they are, and they almost have to be completely dismantled and rebuilt. And the rebuilding doesn't happen by itself. It happens with the input of everybody that these organizations and institutions are meant to serve. And last year, I personally was at a crossroads because I felt that Dominique Gallery, which was a baby of mine, had run its course. I tried all the things that I could do on my own since starting the gallery to scale it, you know, and I even had to return to working full time a couple years ago just to support my efforts, because I've had the gallery space since 2015. I tried to do all the things to sort of raise money, to build a collector base, to really add artists to the roster and do all these things, but I was limited by opportunity, by funding. But then I also saw my peers in other spaces thriving, and I wondered, what am I doing wrong? What's the difference here? Is it, you know, I'm a Black woman arts worker and gallerist. Why am I not having the same agency and opportunities and accessibility in this? And I don't know the answers for all of that, but I will say I've also been an Artsy partner because the auction's hosted on Artsy. I've been a partner since 2018, but the most traction I ever received in all my sales, inquiries, all these things happened last year. And I want to know why. Why did the world suddenly start caring about what Black people have to say, about Black art? Is it somehow different than it was a few years ago? I would say no, but the audience and the opportunities are a little bit different. And it's a mixed blessing to kind of be in this position because the artists like yourselves have stepped up to the plate. You've advocated for yourselves and your peers. You're carving out new lanes. And even though it seems like evergreen, there's a lot of opportunities now, you have to ask, like, why wasn't it like this just a few years ago? And how can we kind of keep this trajectory going where we can speak for ourselves, work with organizations, work with other artists to continue what we're doing in spite of everything that's going on. And so that to me is a form of activism. And I think that Black creativity of any marginalized artist, not just Black artists, is a form of resistance, reclaiming of our humanity, of our creativity, of what we have to say and do, and taking ownership of that is a form of activism. And while you may not make work that has these political statements or other direct messaging, you existing right now and you getting in your studio every day and making work in this world is activism. And stepping up to the plate and telling other galleries and other organizations and other community partners that you exist and you're on these terms and this is what your work means and this is how it should be treated is a form of activism. So I would like to kind of turn it over to you guys. And I want to ask you a specific set of questions that can kind of start a conversation here about what your role is, as an artist. How have you managed to sustain your practice in this last year? And also, what does sort of the future of your art practice look like? And it's a broad kind of topic, but what I want to get into is the activism part of it is how do we continue to stand up for ourselves, not just on the canvas, but in this sort of whole ecosystem. And what are these conversations looking like going forward when people approach you to donate work or to be in this group show or to participate in something because of the cause or to be the example, of what these organizations are trying to do going forward, right? And we want to avoid tokenism, obviously. We want to avoid exploitation, obviously. But sometimes we can manipulate these things and use them to our benefit. And that, again, like I said, is a form of activism. So I would like to start off with Trotter, because I think that photography, like I started with, it's not easy, but it's quickly, it's able to be shared widely, right? And you, I think, are really on the ground. You've been on the ground. I just think back at some of the photos that you did during, like the Nipsey Hussle Memorial or other things like that, where you're capturing moments in time. You are sort of capturing a narrative that's specific to a certain community. And you're also capturing the identities of your loved ones and friends and family in your work and telling a story. So I would like to know, what do you think about how your practice kind of fits into those parameters I was talking about, and what you personally feel like you can do to, as an artist, to uphold this idea of your work as a form of resistance and activism?
I think living in America and being Black is naturally resistance. And we've seen it through generations of family trauma. in regards to, well, first, before I get into any of that, thank you so much. This is dope. Yeah, it's great to talk to y'all and meet y'all. I'm really excited. But yeah, in regards to my work or my art, you mentioned the Nipsey Hussle Memorial. I've been photographing, I guess, I work a lot in the commercial space, but in doing the work that I do, I know I have my roots in photojournalism and just documenting the world around me. So if it was the Million Man March in 2015 or the day that gay marriage was legalized, and I want to say that may have been 2014, but I remember I was in Detroit photographing weddings at like churches, not at churches and courthouses and stuff. The work is, it's being present and choosing. When I take a photograph, I'm aligned with the stance that I feel personally in the image that I'm taking, if that makes any sense, or at least I try to be. There's a bias to who has the power behind the lens, and so the story that I try to depict is one that represents my natural life and my natural resistance. The cool thing is jumping into different spaces, be it, creating photography with intent of it living as fine art or as commercial work or whatever, is trying to develop the same visual narratives and concepts so that viewers can understand that it is all the same conversation. We're all just trying to talk. I feel like as artists, we just want the person to get the joke. And it doesn't matter what medium it is, if it's music or paint or sculpture. If you're speaking up in the sense of resistance, I feel like it just shows through. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. And so also, and I want to get into just another thing with images, right, and photographs. I think that, I've received a couple of requests just through the gallery, for organizations who want to make a statement, who want to do something for a cause, and are asking like, oh, do you have artists who do work in this medium, or, any kind of pictures or of protest footage or other stuff that is, in my opinion, important. But it's also, we are thinking about trauma, and I think you said that before. We don't always need to work in a traumatic space, right? The messages and the work and us making it and showing it is, like I said, the resistance, the survival part of it. And so when we see all the, the posters and the pictures and the paintings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all these people, that's one part of the story. Mm-hmm. And, what I love, I think, Hasef has a beautiful picture of Breonna. It's that we have these new heroes and saints and other people in our community that didn't ask to be that, that now they've become, these symbols of a time of significant pain and also significant change. And, are these pictures of these protests and of these victims going to be important and relevant to us in, another 20 years or so? Or are they going to be now replaced by new people? Because since that time, there have been several other murders and terrible things that have happened, not only, against Black men and women, but all kinds of life.
That's the joke of it, because being on the side of the lens where you're creating the images, and if you're working in an editorial commercial space or whatever the case may be, there's money behind seeing protest images or depictions of whoever on billboards or on TV, or there's a lot of there's money behind it.
Yeah.
And so if it continues, who is benefiting? We have the archival information, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It's trauma. It's based in trauma. But then you have I feel like Time Magazine had a historic cover a few years ago that was shot by I believe his name is Brandon. I don't want to forget. I don't want to mess his name up. But it was when who passed then? Oh man, you know what I'm talking about? I'm messing up. Time Magazine had it's not George Floyd, obviously, but he was
hold on one second.
What was his name? Sorry.
It's fine. But that just goes to show you there's so many of stories.
I can show it on my screen if that's okay. I don't know. But this piece here, this was in Baltimore. This was in 2015.
Oh, right, yeah.
If you said, the amount of death hasn't stopped, these scenarios haven't ended, the trauma is still there, and it's been here for generations. So it's kind of hard, I would say personally, to really say, where is the power and who does the power lie with, and who is really benefiting from the creation of the work or anything like that. When from the photographer's standpoint or the artist's standpoint, you're trying to depict this and share it to the world in the sense of saying it needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But it continues, so yeah.
Okay, I want to move over to Hasef, because I think, in your practice, in addition to your work, you also have a fine art printing studio. And, I think last year, just with all the protests, there was a lot of signage, there were a lot of posters, there were a lot of billboards, murals, all these things that came up to, amplify what was going on socially and culturally. I know that I probably had talked to you a couple times about different opportunities, but then I had to pull back on some of them, because I always ask the question, like, what's the intention behind this? Why are we going to ask an artist to put a mural up about Black Lives Matter or about, COVID? What is your personal relationship with that? And also, what purpose does sort of depicting the pain, the suffering, the sad elements of all the things going on, how does that help the cause? Or is it just sort of symbolizing what's going on? We're putting it in everyone's face to remind them. Because sometimes when I see signage, or like you said, that Time cover, or other, artwork that's been generated that kind of is like talking about like the number of deaths and the, what's happening with Black women and Black babies and all these things, it's some of those graphics and some of that text, it's hard for me to look at all the time, because I might have started my day feeling a certain way, and then I see something like that. And is it just me as a Black woman who maybe is personally affected by some of these things? Is that those feelings coming from that? Or do other people feel this way too? And I think that our responses to all the type of work are almost unique to who we are and how we engage with it, and what our personal traumas and stories are. So it's a really delicate balance, because you might be making work that speaks just from your core and what you see and what you want to capture. But the responsibility of artists sometimes means that we have to kind of be mindful of what other people are going to feel and see when they look at the work. And not to say that you should alter your practice, or you should do things to change to be mindful of that, but just that's part of it, and the words that we put out and the images that we put out really have an impact. It could be a positive impact or it could be a negative one. So, Hasef, you obviously have made, a lot of prints, you've done drawings, you've done collages and all kinds of work that kind of, as the way I see it, it's a little bit more intimate, it's a little bit more personal. But why don't you share with me what your process is? Because, even the drawing that's in here, the image of a man, sort of in a state of reflection. I mean, it's emotional, but it's real, that, and I think that's where we're getting at, that maybe these pieces of art, you're not going to see a protest image or something. You're actually going to see somebody, just having a moment.
Right.
And like that kind of artwork to me is also a form of art activism, because sometimes we need to just show everybody that we just need a moment. We need to sit down and chill and just be in our own element. And that emotion that you've captured here is part of this activism that we're talking about, that we need time. We need time and we need rest. So tell me a little bit about this piece, or also like some of the stuff that you made during last year.
So during the past year, it was interesting for me. I've had a lot of revelations during this pandemic, because everything just happened so fast. So for me, I teach in art education, and I was teaching with this one organization that worked with Emmanuel Arts High School. And, just seeing the students and all of the different issues they're going through as far as like how they express themselves. Like with this piece, I was thinking about the laws that had to be passed for students to be able to express themselves through their hair, like Black kids, like being able to wear locks and braids, to like, and I mean, it was to the point where they were telling the students, like, you're not going to graduate if you wear your hair like this, or if your hair is in an afro, like it's not professional. And it's like, well, this is my natural God-given hair. How are you going to tell me it's not natural? But yeah. And just thinking about all of the trauma images of like, accidentally watching videos on Instagram of like the different killings of that just happen everywhere, every minute, every second. And just sometimes you just need to sit and decompress. Recently, I just left America and just went on a vacation, and I just turned my phone off. I mean, I turned it on to post pictures, but because I just feel like I need to share the joy.
That time away.
Huh?
That time away.
Yeah, you need time away, because if you don't, it'll put you in a state of depression. And I mean, I've fallen into states of depression where I didn't even know. And, I found myself just staying in the bed, not wanting to get up and do anything, and not knowing how to deal with that. And so working through those things and getting up and just saying like, okay, I'm just going to make it happen, and pushing through the traumas. So for me, what I did was I decided just to take away all of the stress. So I quit my jobs, and I just decided I was just going to focus on my art full time. And I opened up a print shop, because I mean, that's another thing, like, as an artist, it's expensive. And knowing that, I wanted to be able to help other artists and young artists coming up, and create like opportunities for them to show their work, and create like deals where they can get prints, or they can come work and get some free prints for working. So, creating other opportunities for other young BIPOC people. And I don't know, it's just been interesting. I try not to watch it, and I just try to keep myself happy, even though I know it's happening, because like you got to put yourself first at the end of the day, and you got to get your energy right, because it literally takes away from your energy and your life, and like it can kill you. So you don't want that to happen. I think it's important to have discussions, and that's one of the things I did that helped me a lot, was just having a discussion with other artists and reaching out to them and talking with them about what they were going through, because everybody's going through it, even if it seems like all lit on Instagram and everybody's like doing X, Y, and Z, like everybody's going through something. And they may not they may not have nobody asking them how they're doing because everybody just thinks they're doing good, you know? So it's just always good to just reach out and just check on people and just, you know, make sure everybody's good and keeping that good energy, you know? And just also getting sunlight. That's hella important. Like, make sure you.
Yeah, that's true. And I think
like I was doing that today. Thank you.
You know.
I like that you said the conversation, right? You know, so the artwork, if it can stir up a conversation amongst people about a relevant topic like, you know, race and economics and status and all these things, then I consider that to be a success because, you know, especially with virtual art shows and all the things that had to pivot last year, there was a lot of things that, you know, sometimes work is not sold, and now if there's no place to see it and all that, and we're living in this sort of digital space, it lends itself, I guess, to easier conversations, because if it's on Instagram, you know, there's comments and chatter and some good, some bad, but it's people are talking, they're looking and they're talking. So that's one thing that I think really grew a lot last year, because before, you know, when my experience with going to see a show or participating in some in-person event, it kind of just stopped there. As soon as I left, that was it. But I think now one of the gifts of this moment that we're in is that we can kind of revisit some of those conversations. You can go back to that post, you can go back to that image and kind of add your insights, or just read what people are seeing and feeling, which, you know, in person, you wouldn't really have that so much. It would be a quick in and out conversation. So I think that's one benefit to the practices that are happening right now. I also would like to shift a little bit to Miss Alicia here. Last year was crazy year for you, I know. And yet you kept making all this work. And what I love about your work is that it is, you know, it's process driven and oriented. There's time and there's, you know, thinking that goes into all the stuff that you're putting together, because your work really is truly mixed media. Like, you have elements from all over the world in your work, which I think is very symbolic, because, you know, the art world, as I see it, is very diverse. It's wide ranging, and there's so many stories, and there's so many experiences and details that all artists and patrons bring to the table. And your work, it really kind of captures a lot of your own personal story, but the things that you're kind of experiencing and engaging with in your environment. And a lot of your work actually includes pieces of the environment. So I would like to, you know, put a little bit of a new lens on that through this sort of activism angle, because I think that aside from posters and photographs and prints, that work like yours can be seen in the same way because of what it represents. So can you speak a little bit about, you know, how you piece your stuff together and how you sort of survived last year, and maybe how it sort of impacted your practice going forward?
Definitely. First of all, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to be here. And with Trotter and Hasef, I'm like, yay, we're here. But honestly, you know, I think that just to say this, that art for me, it's not even that I'm coming from an activist position, but I think it just naturally is happening because I want to figure out, my question always is, how do we get here today? Why, you know, and why are we going through all these things, and what is the root, you know? And so for me, I'm always going back to history to really look at that, but also not staying there, not getting stuck in the history and being like, okay, this happened and I can't get over it. It's about, how do we bring that history to the forefront, but then also go forward into the future, you know? So that's kind of really what the work is really about. And so when COVID hit and when, this explosion of sort of everyone sort of waking up to what's going on racially in the country systematically, I mean, it was like a shift in my work process, in the sense of like, usually I'm reaching back to history, but then it became this immediate need to like, and I'm not even speaking to the work that you're showing right now, because this is more for the auction, but just in general, like the work that I was making in 2020 was me having this reaction, this emotional sort of immediate, what am I feeling right now? And then the work started to incorporate masks, literally, as a material into sculptural objects. And so the work shifted in a way that I didn't ever anticipate, which I'm never anticipating anything. I'm always like just going with the flow. But I was surprised that in a weird way, I was having like an art therapy moment. I mean, it's like, and I feel like that sounds cheesy, but at the end of the day, I do think that when we're making the actual work, there's some sort of sense of like, it's helping us in a way. It's for me, I'm just like, I need this moment to reflect. I need this moment to just sit with this, and I do it in my way, which is making stuff, and not everybody is meant to do that. But I think this past year was interesting because, I was getting a lot of hey, do you want to do this thing? Or a friend of mine was getting an offer to do some Target ad. And it was kind of like,
Right.
And I'm not, I used to be in the fashion world, so I understand the commercial side of things, but it was kind of just almost like jarring in a bad way, because I was just like, I don't know if I want to be a part of this. And also, why are you asking us now? And also, should I do this? Is this a part of my practice? So there's this balance that we have to find when we're making and when we're being asked, do I say yes? Do I say no? And standing up for your own work in a way, like where I want to be. Yeah. Luckily, that Target thing didn't happen, but because then I would have been like, should I do it? Because there's this other element of it that's money, like we're having a hard time. Like, as much as I'm sad about or grateful that we're all being sort of like, hey, like, can you do this thing for us? Because we're interested in Black artists now. As much as I hate that, then I'm like, well, do I take the opportunity? So there's this weird sort of moment happening of they're seeing us, but they're also, is it just for now? Is it just because of the moment, because it's a trend? So it's just been an interesting year with deciphering all of it and figuring it all out. And, but for me, it's never about, not working. Like I'm a workaholic. I have to work. So that's just a given. I'm always going to be making, and my making is always going to be involved with some sort of interest in society and what's happening in the world, which is automatically activism in itself because of who I am and what the work is. But yeah, sorry, I don't even know if I answered your question.
I mean, you brought it right back to my original point, which was, I think as I thought about this conversation and as I thought about different examples of art activism in the past, did they really actually make any real change? When I looked at, or was that just sort of a moment in time? And, is the work that is made supposed to be actionable? Like, are people supposed to do something with that? And this begs the question of art, and even artists, especially artists of color. It's not our job really to do that work, right? You can have a message, you can have artwork that triggers a feeling or something, but the real labor of it all, and the job of it is, I believe, on the part of the patrons and the organizations and the institutions that house this work. And so where the activism kind of plays into that is, like you said, should I do this? What are the parameters? Like, why do you want to engage with me now? And also, how do you control and monitor that relationship? And I think that prior to this moment, a lot of companies and organizations and nonprofits, whatever, were not asked those questions. People think they're doing a good thing by buying your work or by showing you here or by doing something. But if the intentions are not very clear, and if it is performative, if it is just to check off a box or whatever,
Performative, I like that.
yeah, then it failed to be what it was meant to be, because it stops right there. So I think that the fact that you're having these conversations and even thinking about whether or not to say yes or no is you operating in that sort of resistant activist model, because now it's like you're protecting something which is yourself and your work, and that means something.
There's to me the relationship of artists and the consumer side when it comes to brands and stuff, it's or just whatever, it's kind of like a carrot and switch sort of, carrot and stick, Alicia, when you said that everything that was happening made you react and peer closely at the present, it kind of hit me in a reverse way, making me want to do research into the past and how over the decades of, you look at any industry, the sports industry, music industry, wherever there's been celebration of Black talent, there's also the little, biopic that drops 20 years later that shows all of the dark bullshit that those artists had to go through, and the schemy, the schemy contracts and all of that stuff. Like, we are, even when we're on the stage, we have to have our sword and shield to really defend what's going on, because it's almost impossible to know who has your best interest. And so I was a part of the Seeing Black coalition of photographers last year, and we did it was an amazing effort. You got all of these artists of color coming together and putting up this beautiful work. Some of it was protest, some of it was just daily life, some of it, it was just a myriad of just the Black experience. And it was a charitable effort to support the Black community through the pandemic. You had age-old institutions like the Whitney Museum go and buy tons of this work, $100 a pop, and then they tried to do a show with it.
$100? Okay.
That's how much the prints were selling. But we are at a interesting disadvantage most times because of where we're naturally coming from. I feel like there's an element of starvation to a certain degree because we are artists, but it's compacted, or there's interest on that because we're Black artists. It's just so much.
Can I ask you, Trotter, specifically, because I think it's interesting that you work in this commercial space, and for me, like I had a background in fashion, and so I had to like navigate that world, and I'm not gonna lie, I hated it, but like but it definitely informed me in lots of different ways. But how do you navigate, your personal work that's very narrative, and then I guess that's the right, what I'm reconcile being in this commercial space that's asking you to do a different thing?
I've been lucky enough to have a lot of mix of clientele that is Black owned and not. And I want to say, because of the type of work that I do, and it's just been a lot of luck, I'm given the freedom to create and shoot in the way that I want, so that my ethics, I guess you could say, my artistic self is still in the work. I on my site and everything, you know, when I have interviews, I feel like my artist statement in life is to venerate the Black body. And so at any point in time, if I can keep that broad umbrella, I can find a way, you know, in any space, as long as I'm, you know, yeah. What gets weird is the things that are behind closed doors. So
Yeah.
the time, you know, how you said, you know, okay, when this opportunity comes, you know, it's difficult. It's definitely difficult. I've been able to walk away from some, you know, certain situations. I'm dealing with situations now where, you know, if the work itself has nothing to do with, you know, say a racial concept, it's more so of having the integrity as an artist for knowing your worth, you know, in certain scenarios. It's yeah, it's a lot. I can't say I have the navigation game down at all. I'm 23.
I mean, you'll learn as you go, and that's the point. It's like we don't have all the answers. But I would like to just see if we have any questions, because we are about 10 minutes out. I know that went by so fast. If there are any questions from the, let me see. I don't know if I have any from the audience, but while we kind of wrap things up, I just want to.
There's 4 questions in there.
Oh wait, hold on.
I wanted to say the mess up I had earlier. The photographer was Devin Allen, and Freddie Gray murder. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a couple of questions, and you know, maybe each one of you can answer one of these. So, I'm going to say this to Hasef. What advice do you have for artists? This came from one of our audience members. What advice do you have for artists who are just starting their career?
So for artists, what I like to normally tell students is just keep making the work and experimenting with all different mediums, and don't just hone yourself into one, because you need to do all of them to like know what you want to do. You never know, you might join some other ones or 3 of them and create something. So just do it all and read and ask questions.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would add to that, building the community of artists around you, because those are the people who are going to be honest with you. Unlike maybe galleries or institutions who want one specific thing from you, may not tell you the whole story. Which brings me to another question that someone asked: how can galleries and museums be more inclusive and representative of the cities in which they exist? Because LA, I think, is really, you know, a unique melting pot of all kinds of cultures. And even within those cultures, there are layers. So, you know, local museums here, how do you think that they could do the work to be more inclusive and representative of LA specifically, or even Detroit, you know, in your case, or other places?
I would say it starts with hitting the youth in some way or form. I wish I would have experienced art, museums, and artists, and just art in general a lot more as a kid, seeing different people, living artists, that connection to the source of okay, who's going to be walking around making decisions in the next 35 years, I feel like to me is important. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I'm just gonna
What
echo
about you?
that.
So children of every community, they should be.
It starts there. What about you, Hasef?
I taught a class with the Museum of Craft, Contemporary Craft Museum here in LA, and it was a great class. It was all teens. It was, and I hate to think racially, but that's just how I think, is that there were no children that were from the Black diaspora at all, and maybe one, but she dropped out. She didn't, and her parents made her do it. But the reality is that it was very white and there was some Hispanic elements, and I wanted there to be more but diversity. And I don't know if that's parents, I don't know if that's the museum. I think it's everything. I think it's
a
all
mixture.
of that.
Yeah. Because I mean, you know, art was shunned, and as far as when I was growing up, even now, like my people still say,
That's
okay,
not the way you're gonna make money. Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, you think about, okay, what was their experience when they were going into those institutions decades and decades ago? It was probably not good.
Exactly.
Very, very
That's
unwelcome.
what I want to shift. I'm like, no. I'm like, there are possibilities, you know, and so how do we get the community to, you know, I meet a lot of young people that are like, well, I want money. I just want money. I want to make money. Yeah. So what does that mean? That either is it's like all these very almost limited views of what that means. And I'm not even going to go into all that, but just creating more understanding of opportunities of what is possible and what can be possible job-wise, especially.
Yeah, and I think, well, the institutions and the galleries really, they have that information. They should do that work. What were you going to say, Hasef, about even LA?
I was just going to say collaboration. I think collaboration is important. I think Cam made a comeback because they start collaborating. And they reached out to other people to help bring the youth out and bring younger people to the space. So figuring out in your city who's like more connected with them and collaborate with them, and that can get people out to the museums and change the narrative and ideas about what an art museum and art gallery is, you know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, that kind of is a good way to wrap up this conversation is, you know, the art market, the institutions, the organizations, the nonprofits exist, and so do we. And so I think the disconnect is those places knowing that we're right here, that you don't have to go and search and far and wide to make a statement, to make an impact. Like, be active listeners and viewers of your community, your neighbors, the people that are walking the streets right outside of your building. You know, that's an artist, that's a photographer, that's a writer, like that, you know, and that work, we shouldn't always be the ones that have to go and insert ourselves in a place. They should come and say, our doors are open, come in here. And that, I think, is now how all of us, as we start to get these gigs and do all these opportunities, to say, I'm coming in, but can you leave the door open for my homies? Like, can you make sure that they can get in too? Because we have been waiting in line for a long time, and we're here. And that, you know, by working with us, it's only going to increase all of the opportunities and potential for success and for engagement and for viewership or whatever. And I think that's people are starting to acknowledge and recognize that now.
I want to say, I think, and I don't know if this is a radical idea, but I think it's very funny and ironic that Black History Month is probably the hardest working month for everybody Black, but it's supposed to be our time of celebration and paying homage and XYZ, yeah. But everybody is bone tired by the time March comes around and you're drained.
We talked about this. I was burnt out. I was completely exhausted.
I've had clients in Italy, and there were times where I don't know what month it is, but it's sometime in the summer. They take months off. Like they just take complete hiatus, and there's no business done at all. I feel like the certain things, certain movements like that should be taken into consideration, certain ideologies like that, to really to pay back to ourselves so that we can have if it's confidence or whatever the case may be, the Black community shuts down during February. So you celebrate all you want, but you better be setting that content up in December and November or whatever you got to do so we can be at peace. Yeah, I just had to say that.
No, that's an excellent point. And maybe that's a new shift too. It's just think about the labor of, you know, the creatives that you want to engage with and where they're coming from. And coming out of a pandemic where there's probably been considerable loss, you know, in minority communities have been impacted the most by the pandemic, and obviously by all the racial protests. So there's a lot going on in all of our families, in our communities. And as much as we want to work with organizations and companies to take advantage of some things and to show and to sell, that both parties have to be mindful of how best to engage and to be considerate of where people are coming from, because it's not all equal. Somebody may not have had any problems and can easily, do this or do that. And that's really what equity, inclusion, and awareness really means. And I think that all of you guys have done such beautiful work. You're great examples to other artists in the community of how you can be your authentic self and how your work can really speak to who you are and also what your community is, what your family is, and what you want to see in the world. And I hope that you continue to advocate for yourselves and for others. I will always do the same for all of you, which is why you're even included in this, because I love and adore all of you. And I think that it starts here. And I really, really appreciate the Venice Family Clinic for giving me this opportunity, for giving you all this opportunity, for continuing to do the work that they do in the community. And hopefully all this artwork sells, they can raise a lot of money to continue to provide those really, really important services. Because what matters most today is our health and our freedom. And I can't say anything else besides that. And I think that the fact that we're all here today shows just how important that is. And I thank you guys so much for participating. I can't wait to see all of you soon. And
buy some art, because the art is beautiful. I went through the catalog and I was like, oh my God, it really, there is so much beautiful work. So
there's beautiful work. I'm actually after this going to browse through the catalog. But yes, the auction is live on Artsy. It's artsy.net/Venice Art Walk. And you can donate to the clinic. All the information is in the chat. And yes, thank you all. You have a beautiful, glorious day. And thanks again to the Venice Family Clinic for giving us this space.
Yeah.